Welcome to Mark My Words, a podcast that not only aims to inspire and teach the listener about entrepreneurship, it also aims to give my guests an opportunity to talk about their unique journey in entrepreneurship and life. So join me and my guests as we meet at the crossroads on Mark My Words. Today on Mark My Words, I have a little bit of a unique story to bring to you guys, a little bit of a unique guest, definitely somebody who is well entrenched and involved in the entrepreneurial world. Let me get this right because we went over this. So Sara Nay, my guest today, went from intern at Duct Marketing, her father's company, and 14 years later, she is COO of Duct Marketing, and she and her father are heavily involved in helping small business owners with their marketing and just helping them to gain clarity and confidence and to move in the right direction because small businesses is a very tough world. It's not like bigger businesses, well established, lots of money behind them, lots of publicity. So it's really great to have people like Sara and her father, John Jantz, which rhymes with pants, which I had to look up on his LinkedIn profile. And he even used that line, which I thought was fantastic. That saved me 5 minutes. And Sara is actually a co-founder of Spark Lab Consulting with her father, John Jantz, who is the founder of Duct Marketing. We're going to navigate all of this and small business marketing and so much more. Hopefully that was a satisfactory intro, Sara.
Yes, thanks for having me on and for that introduction. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, it took me a few minutes. Usually I meditate a little bit before I introduce somebody. So I try to get creative and I'm like, well, no better way to be creative than to just kind of have run on sentences and just random rambling. So if you want to take a second to just kind of explain the route that you and even your dad, to the best of your ability, how all this came to fruition, that would be wonderful.
Of course. Yeah. So John founded my father, who I call John in business settings. He founded Duct Marketing about 30 years ago now. And so he was started his own business. He was just kind of in the beginning working with a range of different companies. So he was working with some larger companies, some mid-sized and some small companies. But he found an overall challenge in marketing is there wasn't really a systematic approach to marketing. So buying marketing services as a business was hard and complicated and not easy to understand. And so he developed a systematic approach to marketing. And he really fell in love with working with the small businesses. As you said, the small business world out there, there's a lot of challenges that they have to deal with. They're competing against larger budgets and well-known brands in a lot of cases, and they also often don't have team and staff in place to fulfill different roles. And so it's a challenging world, but it's also a very rewarding world because marketing to a small business means a lot to families in a lot of cases because we work with a lot of small business owners that they have this business they've created it, they've had this passion and they're supporting their whole family based off of it. And so it's really important that we can come in and do a great job and help them get their word out and help them grow. So he started Duct Marketing about 30 years ago, as I said, and I've been with the company for 14 years now. And as you mentioned, started out as an intern, not knowing a ton back then about business or marketing, but I promise I've learned a ton over the last 14 years.
When you were growing up, did you ever envision joining the family business? Because I see that you went to college, you kind of went in a little bit of a different direction, major wise, with natural sciences, psychology, which is a dynamic duo right there. Talk a little bit about your route to how you decided, I think I'm going to join the family business.
Yeah, it wasn't something that was always on my mind, which is why I didn't go to school for marketing or something that would have made more sense to join the business longer term. I've always been interested in like people and what drives people and relationships and connections. And so psychology was an interesting major to me, also partially because it didn't have a lot of math involved. But psychology was always an interesting major just to help like understand people at a deeper level. But I didn't know what I was going to do with that because I didn't want to go to grad school. I was done at that point. And so I ended up joining Duct Tape Marketing as an intern. And I was a part time intern after college, just deciding if it was going to make sense for me to work with my dad and deciding if it was something of interest. But the nice thing is, a lot of marketing is, again, understanding people, connecting them, understanding what drives people. So a lot of what I did learn in college back then, I think still applies to what I do today.
And don't feel bad about being bad at math or not liking math because not only did I drop out of like my basic geometry class in high school, but I think I ended high school in applied math. I never even touched trigonometry or calculus. And when I went to college, I didn't even start in math classes that I got legit credits for. It was like the mega beginner college math course. And that's why one of the reasons, at least, why I picked being more in the entertainment, television, film business because I'm way more creative than I am mathematical. So don't
Yeah.
feel bad there.
And I think that's relevant in the marketing industry as well. A lot of what we do is being creative and understanding people and writing copy and designing and understand, like all of that stuff is a very creative side. I've gotten better at the numbers because also a lot of marketing is understanding metrics and data and what's happening with revenue and all of those things. And so I'm not using, what I learned in school necessarily, but I've shifted more into a numbers person in this operations and marketing role that I'm in today. Luckily, just took some time to get there.
And that's interesting because to me, marketing automatically screams numbers and math. So I always stayed away from it. But there's so much more to marketing than just juggling a few numbers around, as you pointed out already.
Yeah, marketing is a very complex industry, I would say, just because there's so many pieces of it and it's changing so fast with the development of different AI tools and what's available in our toolbox today. So yes, it's a very complex industry, and that's why like a lot of the small businesses or companies that we work with, like you often need multiple people in marketing in your team because you can't expect one person to be a strategist and one person to be really great at numbers and one person to be really great at creatives and all of the other things and WordPress and the technology and blah blah blah. So, oftentimes you need multiple people to help build a marketing team. But the good news is I think it's getting more available to small businesses today because a lot of people are going like the fractional route or the part-time freelancer route where they're bringing in multiple people to fill those roles versus having to hire full-time team for all of those positions.
And before I get into all of the things that I feel you're really passionate about, and what really a lot of what you seem to specialize in was a big reason why I wanted to talk to you. But before I get into that part of everything, what was like the turning point where you said, you know what, I think it would be better for me to join the family business and to take my expertise and apply it to that instead of the route you were on.
Yeah, so after college, I was actually an intern at a company. It was an email marketing company, and that was before I ended up going over to duct tape marketing. And with the email marketing company, I was more in like a tactical role, implementation type of role, just kind of assisting as an intern. And then what I've always loved about Duct Tape marketing and what my father preaches is strategy before tactics, and also educating and training and simplifying marketing. All of those things I was really drawn to, because again, our audience is the small business space, and I think people overcomplicate marketing. So we've always been on a mission to simplify it, but then teach it effectively and to always focus on strategy. And so I was really drawn to like those core components, and it's something that I am still very passionate about today.
So, open-ended question, which could probably be a 20-minute answer, but what do you feel are people over complicating when it comes to marketing?
People, there's just a lot, as I mentioned earlier, like there's just a lot that goes into marketing these days. And I feel like a lot of small businesses struggle with like they just dive into tactics without understanding things like their audience or what channels they should be on or what message resonates with them. And so they just dive into all of these things. And then they also don't understand like what their metrics are telling them or what metrics they should even be looking at. And so now they're trying all these marketing things because their competitors are, and they're not sure that they're successful or not. And it just becomes this like really complicated, frustrating scenario. And so where we try to simplify things is we have like a strategy first approach where we create a strategy for the businesses we work with, and then we communicate and we teach them and we educate like as we go into a retainer with them, like why we're doing the things we're doing and what results we're getting and how we're going to shift moving forward. But when we're working with clients in the retainer, like we're trying to teach and educate as much as we're trying to actually do the work. So they're better set up to understand marketing for the long term. If they decide to leave us or hire someone else or bring someone in house, like they've learned a lot through working with us versus just us doing things behind the scenes and them not understanding what we're doing.
And there are a lot of tools out there to market yourself. There's social media, there's actual online ads, there are a ton of things that I'm probably not going to mention or am overlooking. How do you narrow it down to like, hey, you can't pick every little thing, not everything works. You should do A and B or just A, or how
Yeah.
do you get the client to scale back instead of being so excited to go market everywhere?
Everything, yeah. I mean, there's so many different platforms you could be on, and you can spend a lot of money very quickly. And so it all comes down to who are you targeting? Like, who's your target audience? Who you're going after? And then understanding them and like what channels are they on? Are they on Facebook? Are they on LinkedIn? Do they respond to email? So just understanding your target audience is step one, and then understanding where they hang out online is step number two. And then from there, we have a concept we call the marketing hourglass. And so it's mapping out all the ways that someone could get to know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer you. And once you take the time to think through each of those stages, then it might tell you, okay, so if we're saying for no, we should get in front of our clients through Google search, we can do that organically or through paid ads. But until you map out, the hourglass, you really don't know what channels you should focus on.
So you said something about email, and it makes me think about what I feel is a little bit of a dying art, which is email marketing and sending out newsletters and just anything email. Maybe I should let an expert tell us, is email marketing truly like a dying art? Are you discouraging people from using that as a marketing tactic?
We don't typically do like outbound outreach for email with our clients because I do think that is a dying art. I think people can easily ignore emails and not paying attention to them if they don't know who you are and they don't want to hear from you. But for all of our clients, we still use email once someone's already in your world. And so maybe you have like a newsletter sign up on your website, someone signs up for the newsletter, and then you have an onboarding series that's automated that just like introduces your company and gets them comfortable, and then they get the newsletter on an ongoing basis. So we use it, or like a contact us form. That's another example. Like if someone's contacting you, they don't want to wait until you can call them, or schedule a consultation with them or whatever it might be. And so we use email to then say like, thanks for filling out the contact us form. We've received it. We'll be in touch shortly. We appreciate it. Here's some assets that you might find interesting. And so I think there's certain use cases for email to help with like nurturing people around the hourglass. So once they get to know you, they go to your website, you can help build that like and trust through email nurturing. But also the back half of the hourglass, when you're talking about like repeat customers, it is a good way to stay top of mind in the form of like producing a newsletter, but it has to be valuable. It can't just be like content that no one wants to read. It needs to give people a reason to open it, interact, and engage with it.
And engaging and having a reason to engage is crucial, because I get an email once a week from somebody I went to high school with, and it's just kind of like a summary of what they're doing. And really, the only reason that I engage with it is they're very good at what they do, but I know them. So
Mm-hmm.
that really, for me, putting that aside, I tend to not have a whole lot of interest in like any kind of email thing, or, any kind of email thing, for lack of a better way to put it. So I just feel like there's so much coming at us on
Yeah.
social media and everywhere else, which is where I do get a lot of the info from my friend who I'm referring to is actually social media. So I feel like email has just kind of, just my opinion, has kind of fallen a little bit on the back burner when it comes to stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
well, that,
I think some of it comes down to also what type of business and who are you selling to. And so we have a certification program that is, a financial commitment. We certify marketing consultants, fractional CMOs, coaches through a program, through a 3-day training, and then they stay with us in our network community from there. And so there's a lot of information they need in order to make a business shift and a financial investment. So we do have like a 30-day nurture campaign for that. Like once people opt in to learn more information, like we continue to give them value and information and case studies and stories. And so they're ready and they feel more comfortable when they are making the investment, but it's a larger investment where, if you're selling like a product or something, that's more straightforward and doesn't need that level of education, then something like a 30-day nurture series would be overkill. And so I think it really comes down to who are you selling to and what are you selling. And then so it goes back to knowing your audience again, and then that will help tell you if email marketing is a good platform for you to focus on, or maybe not. Maybe you can focus on just paid advertising or whatever it might be.
well, I am going to try to know my audience and make a business shift of my own. And I'm going to start talking about some things that you have in capital letters you love talking about. And I know I love talking about some of this stuff, because when you talk about building culture, building teams, and how to coach a team, how to get a team excited about the company and the mission and everything else. I, at one time, worked as a manager at a large corporation, and I found it to be something that I was very passionate about and found it to be one of my strengths. So when I saw
Yeah.
that these are topics you love talking about, that really excited me. So let me start by just, you have a client and maybe they're just in the process of, okay, I want to go from being a solo entrepreneur to actually building a team. Business is getting too good. I have to expand, I have to hire. And they come to you perhaps, and they want to learn how they can build a culture and how they can build a team, whether it's remote, because remote is very difficult, I'm sure, remote or in person. What's your approach to helping them steer the ship in the right direction?
Yeah. I actually train on this quite often to our community because we certify people establishing businesses and then growing and scaling. So it's a topic I can talk about quite a bit on. But really it starts with defining your mission, vision, and values for your company. Like that is step one. You have to get crystal clear on those things because that will help you hire the people that are aligned with your mission and vision and values, which is really important in order to ensure like a cultural good fit, I would say. And so, like for us, for one example, one of our values is like always be learning or growth, like that whole concept. And so when we're hiring people, we're looking for people that are eager to grow, that are eager to learn, that are, because that's huge in marketing, that want to evolve. But like we took the time to understand that was really important to us to then help us hire people that are aligned with that specific value versus hiring someone that just is fine in one role and doesn't want to expand and doesn't want to learn anything new in marketing. That would be a clash because things are changing so fast for us. And so, step one is getting really clear on those things. And then I typically tell people to read the book, Buy Back Your Time, especially if you're solo and you're looking to then start building a team. It's by Dan Martell, and it basically talks about how to track your time and then understand what you should delegate from there. He typically recommends starting with hiring like a virtual assistant to delegate to them first, and then you might expand. I also recommend mapping out an org chart. So, what does your organizational chart look like today? And you might have your name in all of the buckets, but maybe you're the CEO and you're in sales and you're in marketing and you're in finance and all the different areas. But if you build out the org chart with your name or smaller team and all those buckets, that will helpfully show you visually like what roles you can start to replace or bring people in for. And so I always tell people to like draw an org chart as it exists today, and then draw one out like 1 year and then 3 years from today, because that will help you direct like who to hire and when and next moving forward. And then after you've decided who you want to hire, like getting crystal clear on your job descriptions. And so for that, like we're leading with mission, vision, and value on our job descriptions, and then we'll get into the role. Because again, I want people to be aligned on those things before I want them to qualify for the position. And so then after that, after you have your job descriptions clearly written, it's defining your interview process. And so are you going to do a series of 3 interviews? What's that going to look like? We always do like a cultural fit interview first, and then we do a skills related interview second. That's kind of been our process. And then you have to nail the onboarding piece. And so with onboarding, people like the first 30 days are almost the most, they are the most important days for someone to have long-term happiness within a company in most cases. And so you really have to make them feel welcome, but also set them up for success. And so you don't want them just to be sitting around or have too much too soon. And so you really have to pace out and think strategically what your onboarding process looks like so they have enough information to do well in the role that you're expecting them to do. And so that's kind of like the initial, and then there's a bunch in terms of like establishing a remote culture that I could talk about as well, but I'll pause there in case you want to say anything in response.
I just think it's really amazing how you guys really set the client up to really visualize what their needs really are and what they need to not just think as far as like today or this month, but really like a few years into the future, which I know for me, as far as what I'm doing, I'm like, well, business is picking up more and more. Do I hire a personal assistant? I
Yeah.
really haven't thought a whole lot into like the way future. So I think it's really cool that you're really taking a bigger picture and really getting organized, which I'm sure some people just really need that.
Yeah, I think hiring people and onboarding and training people is really expensive, especially if you don't get it right. And so I think
Yeah.
you have to think the longer term picture. And so in all of the business strategy and planning we're doing, we're always thinking about where are we trying to go in the next year? Where are we trying to go in 3 years? So not just the org chart, but business wise. And then we always plan on a quarterly basis. Like what do we need to do that quarter to get to that 1 year and 3 year goal? And so John and I have quarterly strategic planning meetings every single quarter. We have for the last several years where we're literally looking at our 1 year, 3 year goals and then mapping out the quarterly priorities and discussing things like, do we need to hire someone else? How's the team doing? Is anyone overwhelmed? And we also do quarterly reviews with all of our team as well. So you really have to think long term, and that's harder for some people. But you also have to be able to think short term and think about what's going to get us there as a company in the next quarter as well.
So when somebody's feeling overwhelmed or they're afraid to take a step, like maybe hiring staff or any other step in the process, how do you reel them in and get them maybe to feel a little less afraid?
I think you just have to take a step back and think about what's best for the business. And so let's say you're solo today and you don't have anyone helping you yet. And it is, intimidating making your first hire because you don't want to go down the wrong route, but holding on to everything yourself, you'll hit a ceiling or you're maxed out or you'll get on the verge of burnout because in a lot of cases, it's overwhelming being alone and doing everything in a business, especially if you're looking to grow and scale. But I also would say you don't have to commit to full-time staff from the beginning. So as a company for a long time, it was just John and I as full-time staff, and we worked with a lot of freelancers, a lot of contractors, a lot of partners type of thing to build up kind of our ecosystem. And now we've moved into hiring people full-time, but we also do work with some freelancers as well. And so if you're solo and you're thinking about adding some team to help you, start with someone part-time off of Upwork, for example. That's where we found a lot of great people. And so it's a lower commitment financially, and from a time standpoint, and you can just test things out and see how it goes. But if you are hiring for the first time, like hire slow, start slower, map out your processes and systems, set the people up for success, and that will guarantee a smoother transition than rushing into it and not having things set up.
I know that's one route I've considered with my own business is going to Upwork or just hiring somebody freelancing. Just there's a lot of people out there who are dying to get experience doing anything, and it's not really to, cut corners or sell them short on pay or anything like that, but we all have to start somewhere. And what better way if you're already in on something and there's a level of success and you're feeling good, you know, maybe freelancing is a good option to test the waters as you pretty much alluded to.
Yeah. And we've also hired a lot of freelancers as well off of Upwork that have experience, but they're looking for a balanced lifestyle. So a couple of our key team members, for example, they're freelancers still, but they've been with us for years and they have young kids and they want to drop their kids off at school and they want to pick them up. And so they're limited work windows from like 9 to 2:30, but they're incredibly talented, have a lot of experience, but they wanted that flexibility in part-time work. And so you can absolutely find people that are eager and getting started and you could train them up, but you also can find people with a lot of experience that just want the flexibility and lifestyle of freelancing.
And while we're on the subject of Upwork and remote work, I know you've already have been raring to go on talking about remote work and building remote teams. So let me just kind of give the expert here an opportunity to talk about that and how you coach people into building a remote team.
Yeah. So we've been remote for 10 or so years now at this point. So we joke like now more of our clients and everyone's used to Zoom, where before you would like turn on your camera on Zoom before the pandemic and people were like, I don't have my camera on. And it would just like freak people out. But now people are more comfortable to working remotely, which is really nice these days. But, building a remote work culture is challenging because you miss a lot of the connections and side conversations that happen in office. But we've put a few things in place that I think allow for some of those conversations to happen virtually. And so, a few examples, we have book club that we do on a regular basis because, again, we're learners. So, we're always reading and discussing books. So, that's big and a big piece. We have a meeting every Tuesday that we call Stand Up, and our whole team comes and one person leads it. Every time, and they get to propose a topic. And it's honestly, we don't get any work done. We just bond in that meeting pretty much. And so this week, the girl leading it asked for people to bring pictures of them when they were children, and then to talk about what they wanted to be when they grew up. And so we were just connecting And then in Slack, we use Slack. And so we, on every Wednesday, we do like a random show and tell question. And so this week it was, are you a morning person or night person? And what do you like to do in the morning or night? And then on Friday, we do a happy Friday post where everyone chimes in with something that made their week, and they share pictures and they talk about their kids and they tell stories. And so it's all about like little moments throughout the week that builds that strong remote culture. But we also try to, on top of all of those things, so that helps a lot of like team bonding and building. But we also do on a quarterly basis reviews, which each of our team members, even the contract like part-time contractors, where they're reviewing their happiness in the company and we're reviewing their performance. And so it's not just us saying this is how you're doing, it's they're literally answering questions about their compensation and their amount of hours and their belongingness to the team and how they feel about their boss and all of these things. And so we're hearing from them on a quarterly basis, and then we're also giving them that feedback for growth as well on a quarterly basis.
You brought up some wonderful ideas on how to build camaraderie in a remote setting, because I can speak as somebody who's been working remotely in a team environment away from what I do with podcasting for the past 3 years. And it's wonderful. It opens up a lot of doors for more time for you to do things on a personal level. Like I can get the laundry done on a very consistent basis, which is very important.
I'm doing
And
some today, so I can relate.
as am I. After we're done with this episode, I gotta switch to wash up. But there was a time where I was working. So back a few years ago, I was living in Maryland, commuting to DC, which was like sometimes a 2, 3 hour commute home, and you're like dead tired. I was waking
Yeah.
up at 3 in the morning, and then on top of that, I would have to change the cat litter. I would have to
Mm.
do dishes, do the wash. So taking all that stuff out of the equation and having the flexibility, I still have to go to the office a bit, but I also have a lot of flexibility. And even though I'm not part of a 100% remote team, just the bit that I do have, it's a real game changer.
Yeah. It is a game changer. It's the flexibility and the lifestyle piece, everything you highlighted there. But I do think people get somewhat lonely, especially if they're extroverts and now they're in their house and they're not around people and they're not used to that. So I think being on a remote team, you still have to be very thoughtful about how can you connect with other people on a human level and not just on a work level. So I think, having things that seem dorky like Happy Friday and show and tell and stand up meetings, like if you're listening and you're like, that seems like a waste of time, I'm not going to make money out of that. I would argue that we have people on our team that say they're never leaving duct tape marketing unless we kick them out. And that's because we've made them feel so much part of the team that they're happy and they're going to stay long term. And as I mentioned earlier, hiring new people is expensive and frustrating and hard sometimes. And so, like, if you can retain your team longer, the more their value they're going to be able to provide to you, to the business, to the clients, and hopefully the happier they'll be as well long term.
And it's funny because I have absolutely no substantiation or citations or anything with what I'm about to say, but I'm just gonna say some people say that when you're happy as an employee, you're more productive. Some people actually say when you're not happy, you're more of a productive employee. And what would you say to those arguments?
I definitely think the happier the employee is, the more dedicated they're going to be to the company. Like as long as you're taking care of them, they often care about the work that they're doing. And so a lot of what I put into place when we're hiring new team members, I'm always talking about like, don't put out work that you wouldn't be proud of yourself when you're doing it for your clients. And so those are expectations that I set, but like we have to lead by example and show that we care. So they'll turn around and show that they care. Because if I'm not showing I care as a boss or a manager, why should they ultimately? So it starts from the top on things like that. If you're expecting that out of your team, you have to demonstrate it yourself as well.
I totally agree. I mean, it starts at the top, and you might not think that there's a trickle down effect, but sometimes you can really, if you really step back and take a look, and then you wind up running into something where you wind up having a bad day because XYZ happened, or even a good day, you might be able to trace it back to what's going on further up. So it is very important whether you're just the director of the team, the VP of the team, the founder of the company. It does have a trickle down effect. It does start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think another piece that has a trickle down effect is you have to, like, you're a lot of times you're busy as a CEO, like you have a lot on your plate, um, but you can't forget about your team, I would say, because that's where I see people struggle as well, as they're being managed by someone that's not present and they can't respond and can't give them feedback, so they have no idea if they're going the right direction or not. And so as a manager, no matter what level or position you're in, like, giving your direct reports attention and time and feedback when they need it is also essential, because that's going to set them up for success in the long term versus them playing the guessing game or waiting or getting stuck on projects all the time as well.
Well, speaking of being stuck on projects all the time and the hustle and bustle of being a remote worker, having a remote team, how do you coach not only founders and CEOs, but just the team in general on having a good work-life balance and taking their health and wellness seriously? Because I will say firsthand here that as far as paying attention to like your health and wellness, getting exercise, getting up from the screen, it can be really difficult if you're really one of those workers that gets really involved and just can't tear themselves away. How do you coach people to do better with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on like what role you're in or who I'm talking to. But like for a CEO, for example, a lot of it comes down to building a business that's not reliant on you. So you can take vacation, so you can step away. So maybe if one day you want to sell, your business is better set up to sell. And so I think that's an important piece. But like on my team, for example, we have unlimited vacation for our team, and there's one key person on my team that doesn't ever take vacation because she just is so into work and working hard, and that's just her mentality. And she just took her first vacation finally, and she came back and she was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I feel so much less stressed. Like I'm so happy I did that. And like if your goal is sustaining long term in a career path or a career, like you have to take those breaks, you have to rejuvenate. And on like the health and wellness piece, that is something that I am passionate about, but it helps me be more present and energized throughout the day if I'm able to step away and go for a walk over lunch or whatever it might be. So again, because my goal is I want to be doing this for a long time, you have to take care of yourself, so then you're better at taking care of others in your career.
You ever come across anybody who is burned out, or they tell you they're burned out, or you can just sense that they're burned out?
Yeah, I mean, I myself was burned out a few years ago, so I can relate. Um, Before I moved into more of the operations role, I was doing a lot of client work. So this was before we'd really hired a number of people. So I was doing sales and then managing clients, and then I was like managing our retainer engagements and all of the execution. So like between the clients and all the execution team, I was just managing so many people and so many moving parts. And I got to the point where I was stressed, overwhelmed, didn't want to do it anymore. And so I took a step back and I was like what's really draining me? Is it just too much work, or am I not doing the work that I like? And it was really both of those things. And so we ended up hiring account managers and building up our team. So now I do some consulting still as like a fractional CMO, but I do like strategy work on the front end. And then I step out of engagements. And then we've hired to fill in like the roles to replace me. And so I think if you are feeling burnt out, try to think through those questions. Are you not doing what you love? Are you doing too much? Are you spread too thin? Like what's making you feel burnt out? And then if it's that you're doing what you love, which I company wise, I was still working for a company that I loved, but I wasn't in the right role. So I was able to shift to a role that fits my skill set a lot better and that I love doing. So I think take some reflection time to think through those. And then that will help you get like a clearer path out of how to feel less burnt out.
So, what happens if this has happened in your years of doing this? What happens when a CEO just comes to the conclusion that this isn't working out or being a CEO isn't for them? What's your method on either talking them into it or into continuing on, or just saying, you know what, maybe that is the best route? What's your I guess consulting on those situations?
Yeah, so we've had people like over the years who have become certified in our program that have launched a fractional CMO business. And it's not easy, I would say. There's a lot of work that goes into being an entrepreneur in any space that you're in. But if someone came to me and they have over the years, it's, I don't know if this is for me. Like, I think you just have to deeply analyze, like, really what's causing that thought process. Like, do you not like being a CEO? Do you want to go back to the corporate world if that's what you came from? Is that easier? Does that light you up? Or are you not charging enough and therefore not getting the right clients? And then you can't bring on team to support you. If you had all of those things, would you like to be an entrepreneur then? And so it's really diagnosing like what's the root cause that's help having that person feel like this isn't for me. And it might be that going back to corporate world was something they enjoyed more and they liked to try to be an entrepreneur for a little while, and it's just too much stress and they want the more stable paycheck and go back to familiarity. But it's really trying to figure out like what's actually causing this feeling.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you feel a certain way, whether we're talking about having your own business or not, but you can't really pinpoint what exactly it is. And
Mm-hmm.
even for somebody like me who feels like they're really in touch with how they feel and what they're thinking, where they're at, sometimes even I am a little unsure. So it's really great that people have a sounding board to maybe see things that maybe they're not seeing, which can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And also when people are getting started with launching their businesses, I always talk through like you have to understand your purpose or why. Why are you doing this? And you can think of it in three different ways. Like so you can think somewhat selfishly like why are you doing this for you? You can think about like your immediate circle, like who are you hoping to impact in your immediate circle? So maybe you have older parents or young kids that you want to help out. And then do you want to give back to your outer circle somehow, like donate to charity or mentor a certain group of people? And so you really have to deeply understand the why behind wanting to grow a business, I think, because there are times that it is very challenging. It's almost like waves. I feel like there's a lot of highs, there's a lot of lows, there's a lot of highs, there's a lot of lows. And so if you understand like why personally you're doing this, it does make those lows a little bit easier to ride out.
And might I just add, you said something really important to me, the highs and the lows. So even something as small as what I'm doing, which is a podcast at this point, hoping to grow a little more as time goes on here. But I have, it may seem, if you're listening in your car, at home, wherever you listen, I suppose, it may seem like this conversation's been a blast. It's been a lot of fun, real good energy, but it's honestly not always this easy, and sometimes there can be lows, whether I have people knocking on my door to be on the show and it just doesn't work out, or whatever the case might be. Whatever that low is, like, the lows happen, and it can, I know for me personally, it because it's my show, I even put my name on it. So I take it very personal, and it can get me probably more personal than just about anything when something doesn't work out the way I like or the way I want. And even if you have to take a little time to acknowledge that and work through it, I personally am all for that. But if you're really passionate about what you're doing and really believe in it, you gotta look at all the good that comes out of what you're doing too. And you gotta pick yourself up, know your why, as you stated. And you gotta, if you're really feeling the passion, which I know I do for what I do, you gotta pick yourself up and keep going. And then you have the amazing feeling of when I hit stop on this record and I say goodbye, I'm going to feel fantastic the rest of the day because I feel like it was a success and it went really well. So
Yeah.
it's important to acknowledge the lows, in my opinion, but also remember the highs and remember the good. And if you're feeling it in your heart and your gut, keep on going.
Yeah, it's a great point. Something that I've learned mindset wise over the years is there's no failures in business as long as you learn from them. So if you didn't reach a goal or win a contract or whatever it might be, like analyze the situation, learn from it, see what you can do better next time, and you're still getting closer to your overall goals, even if you did fail on something. So I do think that's just an important mindset thing to keep in mind. But as you said, also celebrating the positive things that come in as well, even if they're small, they're still wins.
Well, speaking of wins, we are getting close to the end of this episode, which I feel we could talk for another hour, but I know you have somewhere you have to be. So I'm going to give you the floor for a second to talk about how people can find Duct Tape Marketing, the other business, Spark Lab Consulting, which you co founded with your father, and how they can work with you. You have the floor.
All the things. So on LinkedIn, my name is just Sara Nay, Nay. That's a great place to connect. I would love to hear from you there. And then also, we have a page that we typically send people to, which is dtm.world/growth. And there are a bunch of free resources on there for either marketing consultants agencies or small business owners. So it's a great place to grab some free content. And there's also, I believe, a button on there where you can book a call with me as well if you're interested in talking further.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I could talk remote hiring and hiring in general and workplace cultures all day, but we have to run. So I thank you very much, Sara Nay, for being on Mark My Words. This was a blast.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. So thank you so much for having me on as a guest.
Absolutely. Well, also a shout out to your dad, John Jantz, which rhymes with pants, for creating duct tape marketing and for creating all of this. We would not be here without him. So
Absolutely.
thank you both for this opportunity. And I'm Mark Schmidt. You just listen to Mark My Words, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks again for taking time out of your busy day to listen to Mark My Words. If you would like to connect with me beyond the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt, where I will be talking about entrepreneurship, careers, and anything else that is on my mind. You can also connect with me on Twitter and Instagram at Nimrod1979 and Nimrod79 respectively. This podcast also has a page on Instagram at Mark My Words. And finally, if you want to leave me a voicemail or check out what I'm up to with the podcast, come find me at podpage.com/mark-my-words. Thanks again for listening, and I'll be back with a new episode soon. Bye for now.